At around 1 p.m. on a mild December the 5th in 1872, Captain David Moorhouse of the Dei Gratia spotted a ship drifting erratically on the horizon. With its sails half set and its directionless movement, he knew immediately something was amiss and instructed his crew to approach. A chill struck the captain as they drew in closer, and he recognised it as the Mary Celeste, a ship captained by his close friend and seasoned sailor, Benjamin Briggs. Moorhouse immediately assembled a boarding party, and they quickly rowed over and clambered their way onto the deck. What greeted them was equal parts confusing and unnerving. The cabins were in good order, the crew's belongings were untouched, there was ample supplies, but there was not a soul on board, along with no bodies, no signs of a struggle, and no clue as to his friend's fate. Just a ghost ship, sailing silently onward. Welcome to Campfire Archives. This is the curse of the Mary Celeste. But Tom, this wasn't the Mary Celeste's first time at sea. In fact, she began her life under a different name, the Amazon. Now, she launched from Nova Scotia in 1861, and her maiden voyage was cursed from the very beginning. Her first captain, Robert McClellan, suddenly falls ill and dies just 9 days into that first journey. Now, sailors, you might be aware, are a very superstitious bunch, especially back then. And it's widely documented that the overwhelming majority would refuse to learn to swim, as they thought it was tempting fate. You're almost goading the sea into trying to capsize you, and you'd have to use that skill that you'd learned. So, like I say, very superstitious. To lose your captain on the maiden voyage was about as dreadful an omen as you can get, and this brands the ship as unlucky right from birth. So soon after, she collides with a fishing boat near Maine, which damages both vessels. She was then caught in Atlantic storms that forced her into port for urgent repairs. A few years later, she runs aground off Cape Breton Island in Canada. She's refloated and repaired again at a great cost. She's barely back in the water when a fire breaks out on board her. And the final straw for her owners is when she collides with and sinks another ship in the English Channel. Again, she requires extensive repairs herself. So at this stage, her owners have had enough and they promptly sell her at auction. So she's repaired extensively, outfitted with new equipment and renamed the Mary Celeste. The new owners hoped that this fresh start, this new lick of paint, would signal a change in the ship's fortunes. But news travels fast along sailors. Everyone knows what ship this is, new name or not. And they also, amongst themselves, give her a new unofficial title, which is the Unlucky Ship. And 3 years later, Tom, she would earn it. So fast forward to November of 1872. The ship was in New York Harbour, being loaded with 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol, bound for Genoa in Italy. Now, this journey should take just a little over a month. And as mentioned before, she's captained by Benjamin Briggs. He's an experienced captain. He's very competent. He's a respected seaman who, alongside his staunch Christian faith, is also a sober family man and known for keeping a calm head when the pressure's on. Effectively, he's exactly the kind of captain that you want to ensure that your ship and your cargo make it to your destination safely.
Not the kind of guy who you'd expect to go missing forever and be involved in something as huge as this.
Exactly not. Not the kind of guy you expect to go AWOL and never be heard from again. 100%. You're absolutely right. So, in effect, he's a safe pair of hands personified. And you could argue he's exactly the kind of captain that the Mary Celeste needs with all this bad luck she's had. So Captain Briggs comes with a hand-picked crew of 7 men. He knew them all well, and he also knew they were all more than capable of manning this ship with him, which meant there were no unknowns, no troublemakers, no drifters, which was often the time back then. It wouldn't be unusual to have crew who you'd never worked with before.
Sure.
These were all very capable individuals that Captain Briggs knew well. He was also taking his wife and young daughter Sophia on board, who was 2 years old at the time of the voyage. Now, it wasn't uncommon for a captain to bring their wives along, As we mentioned, this journey's a month long. It could sometimes be longer than that. And with Sophia only being 2 years old, he wouldn't want to separate her from her mother. And he leaves his son back at port. But with such an experienced and capable crew and captain, the danger feels fairly minimal at this stage. It should be a very straightforward journey. It's only a month long. There's no reason for him to worry and not bring his wife and child along. And so on the 7th of November, 1872, the Mary Celeste set sail for what would be Captain Briggs's final doomed run. So around a month later, the Dei Gratia came across the soulless Mary Celeste. And although confusion and fear run through its crew, there were some clues that we can draw from what the sailors reported when they got onto the deck. So firstly, the crew's belongings and supplies, which were enough for another 6 months at sea, were effectively untouched. The cargo, the alcohol, was still present, still intact, apart from 9 barrels, which were empty. Another clue was that some of the ship's hatch covers had been moved. Now, a ship of this time, as you probably have seen in film or what have you, they had a big hatch cover on the deck. You'd open that so that cargo could be lowered in. These hatch covers were open and had been moved. Now, they were usually covered and closed to prevent seawater, rainwater, the elements, detritus from getting in. But like I say, they'd been left open, which was unusual. One of the ship's pumps had also been dismantled due to being broken, and another was clogged up. Now, these pump water from the ship and make sure that it remains on an even keel. They also found the sounding rod on deck, which is a tool that guides the captain and tells him how much water the ship's taken on, because it's a very fine balance. You need enough, but not too much, so that you don't sink and you can remain buoyant and, like I say, on an even keel. There was also found to be a tow line over the stern or rear of the ship, and there was some damage to the ship's rigging as well. Now, the crew also examined Captain Briggs' log, and the last entry of which was 9 days earlier, which recorded them as being near the Azores, which is about 400 miles to the west of where they found the Celeste. Now, maritime law states that a captain's log must be updated at least once each day. So given what we know about Briggs, it's safe to say whatever happened probably happened 9 or 10 days ago, and probably happened quite quickly because he didn't have an opportunity to make a note of it, which is exactly the kind of thing you'd want to be listing in one of these logs. So a lot of information there, Tom, a lot of evidence. Is anything coming to mind off the bat?
So the first thing that occurred to me as you were talking then was the idea of them just drinking these 9 barrels of alcohol. Huge piss up. Everyone falls over. But as you say, the guy was a non-drinker. He was a very religious man, a very level-headed man, guy in good standing with his job. Why on earth would he orchestrate this? Why would there be a big piss up on the boat? It's not going to happen. Second of all, you kind of think, well, was there a storm? Did they encounter difficult weather, really rough seas? Could something have happened there? Was the ship in any kind of disrepair?
The ship, other than some damage to the rigging and, like I say, a pump being clogged and it being open, that cargo hold, no, it was
immaculate.
It was in very, very good nick. There was no signs of a struggle, no damage that was clear on the deck or anything like that.
So that's really weird. So it's not as though there was a disaster that kind of tore through the boat. Everyone on board was thrown overboard. There would be signs of that.
You would have thought so, yeah, absolutely.
Was there any chance that they were intercepted by, not pirates, but pirates? the closest thing you can get to pirates?
Sure. It's a really interesting theory, and we'll dig into that a little bit. You have covered most of the theories, actually, as to what might have happened. I've never heard the one about them getting pissed up before.
You never know.
Trust that to be where your mind goes, first and foremost, is a big party.
Of course.
It is industrial alcohol as well, so I don't know the specifics, but I imagine 9 barrels of it would probably kill you quite quickly.
Yeah, I tend to just go for like rubbing alcohol when I'm drinking anyway, so
exactly.
It's fine.
But yeah, interesting. You've flirted, for lack of a better term, with a lot of the theories there. So let's dig into some of them a bit more in a moment. So first, we want to talk about what happened to the Dei Gratia, the ship who found the Mary Celeste. So Captain Moorhouse ordered his crew to tie the Mary Celeste to his own ship before setting sail to Gibraltar, which is where the British Vice Admiralty are based.
Remind me, sorry, the ship actually reached its destination?
No.
No, it didn't.
So the Dei Gratia, which is Captain Moorhouse's ship, come across them drifting.
Oh, he was at sea.
He was at sea.
Right,
yeah,
okay, that makes more
drifting
sense.
way away from land, some 400 miles from land.
It would have been a lot weirder if it had reached its destination with nobody on board.
Yeah. So yeah, and it's part of why it's a mystery. So yeah, they come across it. He orders the Mary Celeste tied to his own ship, and they basically drag her into Gibraltar to see the British Vice Admiralty and report this. Now, to the captain's dismay, similar to what you said before, has someone basically, come and dealt with this crew and thrown them overboard. Suspicion initially falls upon David Moorhouse. Now, at the time, you get almost a finder's fee. If you bring a British ship to the British Vice Admiralty, whether it has its cargo on or not, or crew or not, you're paid a fee for doing that because it's a hell of a lot cheaper to repair ships like this than it is to build one brand new. So they suspect that what Captain Moorhouse might have done is basically boarded, thrown the crew overboard, brought the Mary Celeste in for that fee, in a nutshell. Suspicion falls on his own crew and they're questioned. This is quickly dismissed as they can't find any evidence of foul play or a struggle of any kind, like I say, and all the valuables were still present in the crew's quarters, which didn't really ring true. If this was some kind of act of piracy, why wouldn't they take the valuables as well? Why would they leave them? There'd be no reason to, because there'd be no record of them. The court finds the situation incredibly bewildering, as we do still to this day, and they can't reach a conclusion or even a decent idea as to what might have happened. But so suspicious were the investigators of Moorhouse that they only paid the Dei Gratia about a sixth of what they would have been entitled to for returning the ship, which is just another ungrateful slap in the face for this poor captain who has gone all the way out of his way, hurt his own trade income and what have you to bring it in to do the right thing, and he basically gets given a sixth of what he should have been. But far worse than that is the damage to this crew's reputation. So effectively for the rest of their lives, they struggle to find work, they struggle to find contracts, because they're known as this crew that we don't know for certain, but there is a perception that they had something to do with...
Been accused of doing something wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They might have had something to do with Benjamin Briggs, this respected seaman. Might have had something to do with his and his family's death.
It's a horrible black mark to have on your record.
Absolutely it is, yeah. And it, like I say, it affects them the rest of their careers. But this is not the end of the Mary Celeste's story. And in fact, she sails on for another 10 years. In fact, more than. However, we already had this unlucky backstory. We already had hesitant sailors. Now people are extremely reluctant to serve aboard her. And it doesn't go well the next decade for her. So she changes hands regularly, each time for less and less money. Captains and crew died serving aboard her, there are some reports of. Sailors would abandon her at port after only one voyage, and her cargo often would spoil, barely make a profit. It just got worse and worse. So this cursed reputation just grew and grew until in 1884, when she was purchased by a man called Gilman Parker. Now, he bought her in Boston for a tiny fraction of her actual worth, a ship of this size, which again was purely because of this cursed reputation she had. So Parker, he knows full well of the ship's history, but he believed he had a foolproof way of turning a large profit on her. Do you want to guess what that might be?
Go on.
So he plans to scuttle her and claim insurance money off it.
Right.
So Parker takes out an insurance policy for, quote, expensive and exotic goods, then runs her aground off the coast of Haiti in 1885. Now, in reality, this supposedly valuable cargo is actually like cat food and cheap boot leather.
Okay.
So he's trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes here. So locals start picking the ship clean and looting it, which is what would normally happen. and investigators go out as well. Both are greeted by cat food and boot leather, so quite quickly realise that this fella is trying to run an insurance scam. So Parker has his claim denied and he gets fined. And so this would be the Mary Celeste's tragic final resting place. She's effectively picked clean for timber by locals, and quickly there was nothing left of this once proud brigantine that had caused so much grief for so many. But Tom, before she disappears completely, she would claim her final 3 victims. So I've mentioned Gilman Parker already. He had 2 other co-conspirators. One was a fella called Edward Johnson, a co-conspirator and financier of the scheme, so he put the money up. And the third was a cargo broker, who is supposed to be the person that verifies your cargo is as you say it is. So he was also in on this scheme and said, yeah, lots of exotic, expensive goods in here, knowing full well it was this cat food and cheap leather.
I mean, the first thing that came to mind when you mentioned that Parker tried to pull one over on people in accordance to the ship was he's not going to meet a good fate. I could sense it. Something's going to happen. Something horrible is going to happen.
You're on the money.
Yeah.
Because within a year, all 3 are dead from some unknown, undiagnosed illness of the lung. All the same illness. We don't know what it was. But yeah, they're all gone within the space of a year.
Well, okay. And I take it they were all quite young.
Other than that,
healthy guys.
Healthy guys. Nothing else untoward with them. No pre-existing conditions that we're aware of.
Just a very weird coincidence, if we can call it a coincidence.
If we can call it a coincidence.
That they all went in the space of a year. Wow, that's that's weird.
The final 3 victims of the Mary Celeste. I mean, that we know of. You know, these poor Haitians took this lumber and, built houses out of it and goodness knows what else. So, hopefully the story ends there. So we touched on some theories there, Tom. Let's have a bit more of a consideration about what might have happened to Captain Briggs. So initially when this comes out, as you'd always expect with cases like this, stories of sea monsters abound. That's the first one. Merfolk boarding the ship and killing them off and dragging them
I guess this was
to the sea.
A part of history where those stories were still very much circulating. They were
Absolutely.
Still kind of running wild.
Especially among sailors.
Yeah.
The other key theory for sailors is this is a cursed ship. It's the Celeste itself that has killed these men and women off, etc. But let's focus on the evidence and what it tells us. Now, you mentioned piracy before. And unfortunately, I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that Captain Moorhouse did throw the crew overboard and planned to bring in the finder's fee for the ship. But this is his close friend. Remember, they know each other well. He's also got his family with him, so he has to deal with the morality of killing a child. And there's no signs of a struggle on the ship. And it hasn't been looted. Which all make the piracy theory quite an unattractive one. Why would they not take any of the loot?
I was going to say the only reason that pirates did what they did was to rob. I mean, rarely did they even kill people.
There you go.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect them to kind of chuck every single person, including a woman and baby, overboard. Yeah, it doesn't.
And then if they went to that trouble, why then leave the ship, which is worth a ton of money?
Exactly.
So it just doesn't quite make sense. But you also touched on some kind of weather or natural disaster. Now, interestingly, there was no adverse weather reported around the time of the Mary Celeste's disappearance, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't the cause of the issue. A couple of key theories that have been put forward are, one, a water spout. Do you know what a water spout is?
I don't think I do.
If you imagine a tornado but on the water.
Okay.
So quite terrifying.
Yeah.
If you're a sailor.
You'd think that maybe would have battered the ship a bit more.
This is the problem.
Yeah.
There was some damage to the rigging, but I totally agree. I think we would have seen more damage. It's a possibility that they all threw themselves off the ship when they saw it coming as well, or jumped into the lifeboat. But yeah, I think we would have seen more damage to the ship. There was a theory that Briggs abandoned ship with a plan to scuttle her, like Gilman Parker collect the insurance money. But that, again, that feels really weak to me. He was a good Christian man, really sober, competent captain. I don't see why he would do that, to be honest. Like, that doesn't really wash with me.
I guess if he's lived his life up until this point, according to the rules of the Bible, the guidance of the Bible, then he's not going to just turn in the last second when he's got his family on board with him. It doesn't sit well.
Absolutely. And then he's leaving his other son, his other child,
exactly,
back at port to be fatherless for the rest of his life. Yeah, I'm not buying it personally. Now, the most plausible theory, in my opinion, is one that comes from the evidence of that was found by the De Gratia's crew, specifically 4 key components. So remember, they found that tow rope across the stern or the rear of the ship. The pumps were clogged and dismantled, the hatches were left wide open, and there were 9 empty barrels. So we'll start with the barrels. The industrial alcohol that's housed within is highly combustive and could easily cause an explosion. Now, most of these barrels are made of white oak, but the 9 that leaked were made of red oak. Now, we didn't know this at the time, but the crucial difference is that red oak is far more porous than white oak, meaning that over long time frames, liquid and fumes can seep through red oak. The pumps are there to remove water from the ship, and the hatches can be used for ventilation. How does all this tie in? Do you know where I'm going with it yet?
I think so.
Yeah? So my favourite theory, imagine it's sometimes after Briggs's final log. The strong smell of alcohol vapours start to seep through the cargo hold. They're coming up through the ship, up through the crew's quarters and onto the deck. The captain checks the pumps, sees that they're clogged and malfunctioning. The sounding rod, because the pumps are malfunctioning, shows they're taking on too much water, accurately or not. And this means that the fumes and the spilled alcohol, as far as he knows, are pooling in the depths of the ship with no way out. This highly explosive material, as I mentioned before. Now, this means that at any moment, we could have an enormous explosion and basically just blow the entire ship up and set fire to it. The other issue is these vapours in high doses can lead to impaired judgment, unconsciousness, and they're climbing up through the ship towards his crew and his family,
right,
and his daughter, who's 2 years old.
So he's maybe gone a bit loopy on the fumes.
Maybe he's gone a bit loopy on the fumes, or it's at very least had an impact on his decision-making ability. The captain begins work to repair the pump, which is why one of them was dismantled, before realising the extent of the leak, 9 barrels worth, and fumes covering the cargo hold, and orders everyone into the lifeboat. But not before he opens the cargo and crew's hatches so that he can vent the fumes out. Now, on the face of it, his plan is simple and sound. Tie the lifeboat to the stern of the ship, allow the vapours to vent out while we get in the lifeboat, and wait there for an hour or two until everything's seeped out of it and the danger's past. Absolute worst case, if the ship does explode during that time, at least we're a good fair few meters back and, we're in the safety of the lifeboat, or relative safety comparatively to being on the ship. With the tension being put on the rope by the full rowboat and the fraying caused by choppy seas, the rope tying their small rowboat to the Mary Celeste snaps. Now, the captain and his crew would immediately grab the oars and attempt to catch up with the ship, but this would be an impossible task, effectively. A ship like the Mary Celeste at half sail would move at about 5 knots, whilst the crew in their rowboat at full tilt could probably hit around 2 knots at best, so less than half of the speed of the Celeste. Soon exhaustion sets in, and within minutes, their ship would have pulled hundreds of feet in front of them. Desperation turns to despair as the crew realise they aren't catching up to the ship, and in less than an hour, she'd have vanished from sight completely. Now they're adrift in the Atlantic, hundreds of miles from civilization with no food, no way to signal a rescue, and no protection from the elements. Captain Briggs was probably experienced enough to realise there was no hope of rescue for him or his family, and unfortunately, they likely drowned or died of exposure and thirst within days.
Yeah, that's a really plausible theory. I do like that. I think it's a horrible way to go,
It's awful,
knowing
isn't
that
it?
you're doomed as the ship just recedes in front of you. But I mean, given the what we know, it's a good theory. I think it's plausible. I can understand why somebody would feel the need to leave the ship in that scenario. It's just a shame that if that is what happened, that's the way it went. But I guess that doesn't really account for all the other disasters that befell the ship before and after this.
This is it. It's really tragic, and it's not like it's particularly exciting. It's really sad.
Mm.
I think you're absolutely right in the point you made. Maybe the fumes are getting to him slightly. He's a really capable captain. A lot of accounts say in that situation, that is the best move by a country mile. It didn't work out. Unfortunately, he was very unlucky, but that's what he should have done.
Yeah.
So there's actually an argument that he was so competent, lesser captains would have risked it and been like, oh, well, it's not the biggest deal. Repair the pump, the fumes will vacate, it'll be fine. Because he understood how much danger they were in, that unfortunately probably cost him and his family their lives. And I don't think it would have helped having his daughter on board either. He might have been more prepared to take a risk if it wasn't for the fact his wife and 2-year-old
I
daughter
understand
were
that.
there.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be doing the same thing. You just want to do whatever you can, but probably takes the best route towards ensuring that they're going to be all right. But sadly, it's just the way it happened, if that's the way it happened.
Yeah. But you are absolutely right in the other thing you said, which was, what an unlucky ship. I don't know if I put much stock in curses, Tom.
No, me neither.
But this is a wild history and life this ship's had.
It's weird to think just how many coincidences this would have to be in pretty close range to each other, rather than it being a curse. But I'm entirely inclined to agree. I don't think curses are real per se.
Yeah, to be convinced.
I need to be convinced. Maybe this is the story that'll do it. But I also think that it's a very far-fetched. It falls into the realms of kind of concretely fiction, I would say, personally.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that there wasn't something potentially paranormal at foot here. Curse? Maybe not.
I will say I'm very happy with the way the story ends. And I do like that the three get their comeuppance, the people who try and pull the insurance cam. That's quite nice, the way they all die. Now, I will say, obviously, at the time, did a lot of people die from illnesses that we couldn't medicate, couldn't diagnose? Yes, of course they did. Were lung diseases common? Yes, of course they were. So saying 3 men died in the space of a year of a lung disease that is a mystery to us is not groundbreaking.
Is there any chance, that they caught this from one another? Did they spend a lot of time together?
Well, probably not, simply because I think there was quite an amount of time between them dying.
Okay.
Gilman Parker dies within a couple of months of the trial, whereas the cargo broker dies about a year after it.
Okay.
So there's quite some distance in between their deaths.
Yeah, so it is pretty much a full year then. It's not, okay.
Yeah, and they're spread throughout that year. So could they have caught up for each other? Potentially, I suppose, but probably not, because it probably would have hit you a bit quicker than that.
And they don't know what condition it was.
They don't know what
TB
condition
or
it was.
Like, no.
It probably was TB or something similar, is the reality. But still, a nice ending to the story, I think, and it ties it off nicely. I think it's almost safe to say we basically know what happened here.
It feels like that's a really well thought out explanation of what could have gone down, and it's very heavily rooted in reality, of course, and that's what makes it so enthralling, I think, is the fact that there's such a concrete explanation. It's not like, it could have been this, it could have been that. It's like, here's a step-by-step. We'll run you through exactly what could have happened here, what the theory is. And it's very meticulous, isn't it? It all comes together quite nicely to form what I would say is probably the explanation. I still find it weird that there were so many strange coincidences before and after the ship lost its crew. But it's the best we're going to get, I think.
I think I totally agree. It's a good story. There's always going to be ambiguity around it. We're never going to know really what happened. But to me, that makes the most sense, I think.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of these stories as well, the fact that there's always still some ambiguity.
Absolutely.
We don't know for certain.
I remember when I was a kid, this was a huge deal, the Mary Celeste. You know, no one knows what happened there. I feel like we almost do, really.
I would agree. I think I would confidently put money on this explanation having been what actually went down.
Not aliens, no.
Not aliens, I would say. Maybe not aliens. I mean, not the Kraken.
That is another one that gets floated.
I would imagine it would.
Aliens, yeah. And of course the Kraken, sea monsters.
Yeah. Aliens, come on. No, I think quite firmly that we've maybe hit the nail on the head with what happened here. It's still a great story.
It's a good story.
It doesn't have to be paranormal for it to be a great story. But I do think that, yeah, maybe this is one that's a little bit more rooted in the real kind of concrete scientific explanations rather than what could have been.
Whatever your beliefs, you have to concede the Mary Celeste is an extremely unlucky ship. Personally, I find her checkered history before and after the event that made her famous just as tragic and interesting. Part of me wonders if her reputation had something to do with the crew's disappearance, almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Did a normally level-headed and experienced captain let his fears and superstitions get the better of him? Some panic must have set in given how quickly the ship was abandoned, and I can't help but think the dark cloud over the Celeste played a part. This, coupled with the fact that Captain Briggs' wife and infant daughter were aboard, it makes sense to me that you would want to take an extremely cautious approach to what was a life-threatening situation. In my eyes, this really is just a caring father and competent captain making decisions to try and save the lives of his loved ones and crew, and by the extremely unlucky snapping of the tow rope, this would probably have turned out completely differently. This is a story I didn't expect to have such a tragic ending. I think not of Briggs and his crew, experienced sailors that would have faced the possibility of death on every voyage, but of a tiny 2-year-old who cannot understand the situation, being battered by the elements, and a husband and wife trying their best to protect their daughter, is something I find deeply upsetting. I can only imagine the hopelessness they must have felt and hope that however they met their end, they didn't suffer.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Campfire Archives. If you'd like to send us a story or just get in touch, you can email hello.campfirearchives@gmail.com. Alternatively, you can follow us on Instagram @campfire_archives. See you next time.